Welcome to Stop Wasting Your Wine, a wine review podcast dedicated to helping you find the right wine for the right vibes. On this episode, we interview
Daley Brennan from VIK Wines.
Exciting day. Thank you so much for coming back to hang out with us here at Stop Wasting Your Wine. I am Joel, and as always, joined by just the two best guys in the whole United States, Colin and Aaron.
They're the two best guys in Jersey and also Florida.
There's some really, really good people west of the Mississippi, and but if I do a little hash in the middle, you guys really stand out. But also, yeah, absolutely. But also super excited. Daley Brennan, thank you so much for joining us here today. So excited to have you on. Daley let me tell you a little bit about Daley. He's British by birth, French by adoption, and this guy is a total wine industry fraud. Okay? Failed neuroscientist who ended up in the USA selling Chilean wine after following in Steven Spurrier's footsteps of owning wine retail stores in Paris. There's a lot to unpack here. Excited to get into all of this, but thanks for joining. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you very much. How are you guys?
We're great. I mean, Daley, you gotta explain that bio to the listener, man. Like, we're not being jerks. Like, come on, this is what you gave us to work with. How dare you call yourself that?
Well, it's all true. That's the thing. So yeah, British by birth. I was born in the UK, and then when I was 18 years old, I got the opportunity to go and study my undergraduate degree in Paris. So I left.
Very cool.
And the idea essentially was I wanted to be an academic. So I did a French degree. Essentially, it was like literature, language, translation, all that kind of thing. And as I was studying, I realized, okay, I'm an adult, I'm a monolingual, but I'm learning a second language. And I wanted to understand what was going on in my own brain when I learned a second language, because often you'll hear people say, oh, once you get to age, call it 12, 13 years old, you can't learn a second language. But I felt like anecdotally, there were people around me who'd done a pretty good job.
For sure.
So I said, all right, if I'm thinking about being an academic and I want to work in universities, what sort of path should I take? And having dabbled around in music over the years, I read a book called This Is Your Brain on Music by Daniel Levitin. This was years ago. And it was one of those books. I don't really have many of these books where people say, oh, that book changed my life. But I can actually say that this one totally did, because I was like, wow, there's this whole other world of music that I'd never seen before. I'd been taking classical piano lessons, learning to sing, all that kind of stuff from a very traditional standpoint for years. But then learning that there were actually like things going on in my brain, and that there was almost like a syntax to music, and that you could see your brain reacting to those type of things. I was like, well, if it exists for music, surely it exists for language. And that just opened up the rabbit hole. So I went and did a master's degree in linguistics and neuroscience at UCL in London. And was like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. But of course, as we all know, going to college is expensive, and you've got to pay the rent. You've got to pay the bills. So what I'd actually been doing was working in wine alongside the studies. So I said, I mentioned that I got to Paris when I was 18. Just at the end of my first year there, I got a job in a wine store that was specialized very specifically in ready-to-drink Bordeaux. Now, at the time, I had no idea.
Incredibly specific. That's like a type of wine shop that exists in France.
Yeah, it's still there. Unfortunately, it's not the same owner anymore. It's been sold. But it was this wine shop that was literally 95% just Bordeaux wines, and it was all, it was wines that were at least 10 to 15 years old. And I had no idea. I was like 18, 19, and we were opening First Growth Bordeaux from the 70s, and I was going, oh, this whole wine stuff, this is pretty good, isn't it? So what essentially happened was, in order to keep on paying for my studies, I was working in this wine store and studying neuroscience alongside it. And then, to cut a long story short, I ended up getting into a PhD program. And it was when I was doing it that I just realized that I wasn't made for the university or the academic world. And this whole idea of the plan B being wine very naturally turned into becoming a plan A. So it was sort of after I did I only did about 6 months worth of PhD study, and I was like, you know what, this isn't what I want to do. I'm going to make wine my full-time gig, and that's kind of what happened in a nutshell. I mean, I just find that the wine industry, it scratches all the itches of anything that I wanted to achieve in academia. You know, there's a big community of different people. I still get to use language skills every now and again. I mean, despite working for a Chilean winery, I don't speak Spanish, which is occasionally frustrating. There's a pedagogical aspect to it as well. I love that when we're doing tastings, whether I'm doing it with professionals, it might be a GSM for a wholesaler, or whether I'm doing a consumer tasting, you know, there is this exchange, there's this discussion. And I also like this idea that everybody's right. That you can't be wrong in wine, essentially. You know, there's always this almost slightly philosophical aspect to it, not to over-intellectualize, you know, what is essentially 80% water in a 750 milliliter bottle. But
that's a really refreshing way to look at it, honestly. Yeah.
That's, you know, that everybody's got an opinion and everybody's entitled to it. And it's really nice. And at the end of the day, you know, the people who are in the wine industry are people who, they like to talk, they like to meet other people, they like to exchange ideas, and it's a social disinhibitor. So yeah, very much so.
But you also like so you obviously had this like huge on ramp and going neuroscience. And by the way, I think like trying 6 months and then exiting is a way better situation than like I did that for 4 years and then decided not to do it. So. Hats off. But also you call yourself a total fraud in the industry, but like you've been in the industry for like 16 years and like getting started in like a cool wine shop in Paris sounds like a better start than most. So why do you call yourself that?
I mean, it gets a laugh. I'm sure anyone who's ever done like sales roles, there are certain things that you can say that you know can get a room on your side, and that it's definitely one that works for me. But again, it's very true. After having done the master's degree and then to the PhD, by the end of it, I was just tired of exams. I didn't want to, particularly as I was now 100% like full time in wine. The last thing I wanted to do was to then go home and start opening a book and start studying. And sincerely, all respect to people who do that. I think it's great. But I'm still waiting for that moment where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back to school now. But, you know, it's been how long? 50, I don't know how many years since?
Right,
I'm still not quite there yet.
I love your story, too. It seems like a lot of people in the wine industry that we talk to didn't really expect to ever be in the wine industry. Just kind of stumbled into it for one reason or another. So, you know, you worked retail, you had your own retail shop. What led you to your current role at VIK?
Oh, well, it was a confluence of the personal and the professional, really, as is often the case. You know, I was approaching that big milestone of turning 30, and you're kind of looking at your life going, oh, what the hell have I done? And you know,
This is the way that I feel this.
Yeah, and 38.
You just touch a chord with all of us.
And I was, you know, I had basically essentially what happened, a relationship ended. I was getting very, dare I say, jaded about trying to be an entrepreneur in France, particularly. And we can talk about the differences between working in France and in the US, if you like. I mean, it's a subject that fascinates me to this day, particularly having been a foreigner in both countries. And I got the opportunity to go and work for one of those chateaux that I started selling, what must have been 10, 11 years previously, called Chateau Pape Clément in Pessac-Léognan. So it was for Bernard Magret. And he sent me to the northeast of the US. And to his credit, he gave me the opportunity to go and learn what it is to do wine wholesale. He saw that I was, you know, an entrepreneur like him. And he was like, well, if you can do it in France, you already speak English, I'm sure you can do it in the US. And if only it were that simple. But that's essentially what happened. He gave me my first job in export, and then something happened in 2020, some pandemic or other.
Something like that.
Yeah. So that sent me back to France. So I've been doing transatlantic ping pong for a couple of years.
Wow.
So it was very useful. I got to see another side of the industry. I worked for a négociant, so I got to see like the production side of things, private labels, selling into supermarkets. I got to see different markets. They heard the British accent and they were like, oh, well, you must be able to sell into the UK. When I'd never worked in the UK. It was completely foreign land to me. And then finally, you asked how I ended up in VIK. Well, there was somebody who I met on that very first stint in the US back in 2018 who became my wife. And there was, therefore, an opportunity for us to either she's going to come to France or I'm going to go to the US. And we decided for various different reasons that it was the best choice for us right now to come to the US. So made the jump back over in 2020. When did I come back? 22? Yeah, it was 2022. After that stint after COVID. And I've been in Astoria ever since.
I do want to ask, so what would you say is the number one difference between working in the U.S. and working in France? Because you put that out there, and I was like noodling on that the entire time.
Oh, I mean, we could do hours on this. The number one difference, though, I think at the end of the day, in the United States, people here have a greater appetite for risk than in France. I feel like the culture here is set up for people to, let's say you do want to start a small business like I did. The culture here is set up where if you fail, there isn't this sense of shame around it. If it doesn't work out, it's kind of process. It's part, exactly. That's a really nice way of putting it, actually. It's part of the process. You do it once, you do it twice, you do it 3 times. And then hopefully maybe on 4 or 5, it might actually succeed. Whereas the difference in France is they are much more reticent to let things run their course. At the moment that things might be going off the rails, or if let's say worse comes to worse, you might end up having to file for a bankruptcy. You'll be slapped on the wrist and told, in some cases, you can't even be a director on a board for the next 7 years. Never mind start your own company. So, I mean, that's an extreme example, but yeah, trying to get banks to follow you, again, don't want to get too far into the weeds, but even employment law, it's very, 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 very difficult to hire somebody in France because you can't actually release them from their contract very easily. So unemployment has often been relatively high relative to other European countries because the moment that you have that long-term contract, you're in. So you better be sure that you're hiring the right person.
Oh, wow.
Like when I discovered at-will contracts in the United States, I was like, what
you
is
love
this?
an at-will contract. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the polar opposite.
Yeah.
So, appetite for risk is huge here. This idea of you can be your own boss, and if the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. It's the old-fashioned American dream, really. Whereas in France, there is very much this idea of the state will look out for me. At least this was my impression. If I don't have a job, I can go to the state and they will give me a subsistence for a couple of years. They will help me find a job. They will offer me training. There's a lot more, well, I was going to use a negative term. I was going to say mollycoddling, but it's not really that. But there's just a lot more of a social safety net in France, whereas here, if you get a severance for 2 weeks, you're doing well, and then it's all right. You got to get back on your own 2 feet.
Super interesting. Yeah. All right. So you come over. You start with VIK, and then first impressions. How does VIK compare to some of the other wineries, especially being in France, seeing some of the classic, when people think wine, they think Italy and France. Like, how would you compare what people think about just wineries in general to the vision and what's happening over at VIK?
So do you know how I mentioned that occasionally there's a line and you can get a bit of a laugh?
Sure.
One of the ways that I like to start a presentation about VIK actually is, people hear this foreign accent and I say something along the lines of, in my previous life, I'd have stood up in front of you here today and I'd have said, I represent such and such a chateau. It's been owned by the same family for 12 generations. They've been farming the same plot of land for 500 years. Well, today, there's none of that. And that it will get a bit of a chuckle because what makes VIK stand out to me is the fact that it is so new. There have only been 10 vintages released in the United States. So it really is an incredibly novel project that shows just quite how well you can do when you concentrate on a particular idea. The VIKs themselves, they had this idea of what they wanted to achieve. They invested the resources in it, but they were also able to take all of the know-how of the past, however long we've been making wine for, thousands of years, and say, all right, we've got a bit of a head start on these. Let's say the Bordeaux folk, because we've got technology to find out what exactly is in our subsoils before we plant the vines. You can build our winery at the same time as we plant the vineyard to make sure that everything goes together nicely. We're not going to have to worry about, do we have vats that are big enough for the different yields each year? Everything was thought out, plotted out, and really nicely designed from day one, which meant that you could essentially advance much more quickly than some of our neighbors.
That's such an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it makes me wonder too, because I know when I was looking at the bottle here too, I noticed I believe it's Millo Valley. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but
Millahue.
Oh, you were way off. You weren't even close.
I was trying to be real cool with my pronunciation.
You missed the whole syllable.
Millahue. But that was a case in point. That was a area I was not familiar with. So, it's interesting you say that they were able to go and do all this studying of the subsoil and, figure out that this is exactly where they wanted to set up. So, what is it about this region, about this area, what they saw in the subsoil samples that made them say, hey, this is where, we want to set up and establish ourselves?
Well, first of all, you won't have heard of it because it's not a DO. Which is great because it means you've got no rules.
I love that.
One of the anecdotes I've heard since working with the VIKs is that when they were getting interested in putting a winery on the map, as it were, everybody said, don't do it in somewhere like Bordeaux because you've got so many rules, you've got so much baggage. So essentially, Alex and Carrie VIK found this horseshoe-shaped valley that had heterogeneous soils with lots of different microclimates. And essentially what they were able to do was just to take samples of, it's a 12,000 acre-ish, about 12,000 acre valley, but only 850 acres are under vine. So I'm making this up, but let's say there was a plot that was full of clay. They could say, that might be great for Merlot. And then they've gone a little bit further down the valley and they go, maybe it's quartz. Let's plant some Syrah there. So it was that kind of thing. It was by looking at the geology and also the meteorological aspect. And they of course worked with specialists, consultants. And one of the first consultants who worked with them actually was a guy named Patrick Valette, whose family were behind Chateau Pavie for many years.
Oh, wow.
Cool. And it's just so wild to find an area, one big plot of land that has all of those different compounds and different, soil types to offer. That's incredible.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's only the first half of it, because of course there's all the different, the novel concepts that Christian Vallejo, who's the winemaker, has started putting in place that helps him on the vinification side as well. For him, he really wants to make sure that this idea of what he calls holistic or cyclical winemaking is very present in the bottle. And what he means by that is he able to use all the resources of the valley and use that in the same way as a chef will use ingredients from an entire region to put it together on a plate and make a meal?
Wow.
Can he do that with VIK? So, for example, rather than just buying amphora, he knew, of course, that there was clay under the vineyard. So he was like, why don't we just make our own amphora out of the clay from the vineyard? So literally you can age the wine in the clay that's from the vineyard. He only ever uses indigenous yeasts. So he's put this concept, he calls it fleuroir, fleur plus terroir, flower plus terroir.
Love it.
Making up words. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It appeals to the linguist in me.
That's fun.
Efficiency.
Efficiency. What he did was he did an analysis of a load of flowers and plants that were already occurring in this valley, and found a handful, depending on which document you read. Sometimes it says 4, sometimes it says up to 12. You know what these winemakers are like. They'll tell you one thing one day and then exactly, yeah. But essentially, he's whittled it down to a small handful of flowers that don't emit an odor or a flavor. And all they serve to do is that if you plant them within the vines, they serve as vessels for more of this yeast. So touch wood, has never had a stuck fermentation, because all you'd need to do is take these dried petals, sprinkle them over the top of the vat, and that will get things cut. And then what was the third thing? Oh, yeah, you want another made-up word, barroir. So it's barrique or barrel plus terroir. So
oh man,
everything at the estate is French oak. But again, there's this idea of holism and sustainability. So Christian said, well, surely there would be a lesser carbon footprint if we shipped the staves over in a container and then built the barrels on site.
Wow.
So what that means is it gives him a whole load of different toasts. So rather than just saying light, medium, heavy, I think he said he had like 50-something different toasts on the last vintage that you could use.
that is so cool.
And he's using oak from the valley to toast the wine. So again, he's sort of infusing a little bit of Chilean oak into these French barrels. And then he'll reuse them, he'll retoast them, repurpose these barrels and get the most out of them. So that, again, it goes back to the sustainability side of things as well. He wants to try and make it as eco-friendly as possible.
I love the connection here between like the laser focus on science and the way that the winery is built and the soil samples, but also this winemaking philosophy that really brings it back to terroir on the land. That's such a unique combination because it's usually one or the other. Very rarely do you find it this well integrated. I find that absolutely fascinating. So VIK's flagship red blend has earned a 100-point score, which is incredible for only having been around for, you said 10 vintages. That's like 10 vintages, at least in America. They've been around longer than that, correct? That's incredible. But that's, not the only wine VIK makes. Can you describe a little bit more about the VIK portfolio beyond the flagship red blend?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I should probably be a little bit more precise. I did say that it's 10 vintages in the US. The first one that was brought to the US was 2011. But of course, the vineyard only started getting planted, I think it was 2006, 2007. So the first vinification actually took place in a neighboring vineyard in 2009. That never saw the light of day. It was just drunk. 2010 was done on a makeshift winery on the site. And I don't think that ever got released. So then the very first vintage that was fully made in the winery as we know it today is the 2011. So, it's the salesman in me fudging it a little bit because it's a nicer story to tell if you can say we went from nothing to 100 points in 10 years. It's a beautiful, it just rolls off the tongue a little bit better.
Yeah, 100%.
In terms of the portfolio itself, it's still quite focused. So VIK was the only cuvée for many years, and then little by little, different expressions of the vineyard have come to be added to the portfolio. The next one was a cuvée called Miacala, and the way that I often describe it, we have essentially in our US portfolio, because the winery has a couple of cuvées that don't make it over here, but in our US portfolio we have the VIK that you guys have in your glass, and we have the Miacala and we have the Omega. And I'm always at pains to be very precise when I describe these so that people know what to expect, because I start talking about Bordeaux. But the only reason I start talking about Bordeaux is because it's what I'm most comfortable with. It's what I know in my heart of hearts. So I'd say like the Omega is kind of the equivalent of the Pauillac de Château Latour. It's kind of like it's the pop and pour. Then the Miacala is like the equivalent of Les Fours de la Tour. It's the wine that's got a glint of the Grand Vin, but it doesn't quite need to be aged for as long. And then of course you've got Le Grand Vin de Château Latour, which is VIK. But then I always need to say, hang on, these are not first, second, and third wines. They can't be, because the vineyard has only been around for
right,
almost 20 years at this point. So these are actually stylistic choices that Christian's able to make, so that he can take a certain parcel. If one particular parcel doesn't produce particularly tannic fruit, he'll know that that's going to go into the Omega. Whereas if he's got a whole plot over this side of the valley that's, beautifully mature Cabernets, he'll be like, okay, this is something that this is going to have a long life ahead of it. So he's able to make choices like that. So that's the traditional portfolio. And then on the other side, we have a range that's called La Plus Belle. And again, the linguist in me, it's why I feel so at home. what it's called La Plus Belle, which translates to the most beautiful. It was a name that Carrie VIK came up with. She borrowed the La from Spanish, the Più from Italiano, and then Belle from French, of course. And that's because she saw this. There was an artist who was helping design part of the hotel that we have on site, and he started painting this bottle just spontaneously one evening. And she was like, "Oh, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. We've got to do something with it." And then thus La Plus Belle was born. And I like to call it the Chilean cuvée because it has a slightly different expression of the valley that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So there's La Plus Belle, the red. There's a La Plus Belle rosé as well. Again, kind of, you're almost in Bordeaux territory because it's a Cabernet Sauvignon dominant rosé that sees a couple of months in barrel. So it's a real good fruit wine. And then the final La Plus Belle is actually a sparkling wine. And again, I have been taken to task when people find out that I have a French passport. I've been taken to task about this because they say, how can you get away with selling something that says champagne on the label, but it's Chilean sparkling wine? And I say, no. It is actually a champagne. So the VIKs did make an investment in a champagne property a few years ago.
Really?
And as a result,
What?
they want the thing about the VIKs is they want to be the best of the best. So if you want to have sparkling wine, well, this isn't going to be Charmat method. This is going to be this is going to be méthode traditionnelle pour vignobles in Ailly. So yeah, there are two sides to this. It's one of the things that I love about this portfolio, particularly as I'm on the sales side, is that I really feel like if I'm speaking to somebody who might be super trendy, Brooklyn style natural wine bar, I can talk to you about indigenous yeasts, I can talk to you about amphora, and I can talk to you about Cabernet Franc all day. Whereas on the other side of the same coin, if you are a traditionalist, if you come from like my Bordeaux background and I say, I want austere Cabernets that won't be ready to drink for 25 years, I can say, well, I've got VIK over here. Do you know what I mean? So it's a really nice portfolio to be able to represent, because all I have to do is adapt my discourse to the person I've got in front of me, and there's going to be something for everybody.
Yeah, and I gotta say, so I got to meet Daley when I was at the Sip of South America event for wine enthusiasts, and Daley's booth what was bumping. Like it was because people were over there because you had this really cool layout of these very like traditional looking bottles with the VIK and that kind of side of the portfolio, and they're all like red and white and similar branding. And then you had the other half that have these like artistic kind of paintings on it, with the Chilean artist. And then, they're champagne. And so I was just standing there and so many people walking over being like, you mean sparkling wine, right? And Daley's sitting there like cracking his knuckles, being like, no way.
Got it.
So it's just a very cool collection.
I mean, it's interesting, Daley. We've had a couple great folks on and different winemakers. And it's always so interesting to hear about the technique and the love and all of that. But what strikes me about everything you've told us today is just I've never heard so much of an innovative, scientific approach, but also, I just think it's so cool recognizing the art that's kind of all around the process as well and incorporating that in there. I think, Colin, you were starting to talk about that. That's what's really been sort of landing for me to this whole time. And I think that's probably why, the experience of drinking the wine is so good and so interesting. And you mentioned too, Daley, that it's, the brand is getting very big. You're at this critical mass, as you're looking forward into the next couple of years, what are some things about what the vineyard is planning, about what's going on in the industry, about Chilean wines even, that are exciting you about the future of VIK or Chilean wine?
So you'll forgive me if I can't divulge anything that hasn't been officially released.
Did we not all sign NDAs?
Yeah, you've heard it here first, folks.
No, there are. Christian Vallejo. You met Marin at the tasting. He's such an energetic guy who's so creative. He's always got ideas. He's definitely working on some interesting things that I'd love to be able to tell you about, but as yet it's verboten. What I can talk to you about though is kind of my, and I hope this wouldn't be too boring to you, but like I have an idea for what VIK can become from a macroeconomic perspective, without it being political. whatever, this is not just linked to any recent administration in any particular country, but over the course of the last, generation or so, we've seen that the people who own the majority of the assets are getting richer and richer, and the people who have less access to assets are getting poorer. But what that obviously means is that there will be a new middle class, and there will be an opportunity for aspirational brands to join a new family, might I say. So I'm hoping for VIK, we can jump onto that. There's going to be people like me who, 15 years ago, if I saved up my pocket money, I might have been able to have afforded a Grand Cru from Burgundy, but I just can't justify it anymore. But the thing is, and what, our 100-point score has even showed, is that you don't have to spend DRC money to get access to these fantastic wines. So what I'm hoping for VIK is that we'll be able to entice a new generation of wine lovers of a similar age to me, perhaps a little older, a little younger, who wouldn't have been able to have the same kind of tasting experience that I was able to have in that Bordeaux store. I'm incredibly lucky to have had that. But, they will associate fine technique, great terroir, and also a really interesting story with us and with VIK. And hopefully that will be aspirational enough, and we can not worry about tiny little, plots of land in northern France anymore.
No, I love that outlook, because, I think that's kind of what we're trying to do here too, is, build a community of people who are excited about wine, who, obviously we're not drinking first growth Bordeaux, or Burgundy is definitely not a regular at any of our houses, I don't think so.
LOL. No.
Yeah, right. So that's just such a fantastic outlook, and I think a lot of people are going to be able to get behind that. And I can't wait to talk about this wine, but if you don't mind, I'd like to throw some wine hot takes at you before we get into it.
Go.
So, okay, what would you say is your favorite go-to cheap wine?
Ooh, I'm gonna sound so douchey, because I'm gonna just do the usual. Oh, I just love dry Riesling from Germany.
It's great.
Solid answer.
Yeah, it is me too.
Yeah, the thing is, though, what's cheap, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a huge range. I try only to drink the really good stuff if I can, because I'm so fortunate that I get offered to, taste these great wines that, I there have been times in my life where I've been an awful lot heavier than I am now. So I trying to limit my consumption just a little bit. But yeah, favorite cheap wine. I couldn't give you a particular producer off the top of my. Oh, I suppose I could. I love those Dr. Luzen entry-level Moselle Rieslings.
Sure.
They are
Absolutely
fantastic. 8.5% alcohol, compare really well with all sorts of different food. But yeah, it kind of feels trendy to say, if it's not Riesling, it's got to be Chenin, right? You know what I mean?
I think
I don't hate that answer on that one, but yeah.
Every time we've had a dry Riesling on the show, we're like, this is really good. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, German dry Riesling, you really can't go wrong.
Delicate and just so deep and interesting, and so every bottle is so different. It's just all so complex. It's kind of like you get just as much complexity at a similar price quality ratio as you do from sherry, I think.
Sure.
It's really, really great stuff.
We need to explore sherry a little bit.
We have not done any fortified wine on this show, which is, bad on us, but we do need to get in that.
No, that's awesome. So cool to get to know, a little bit more about you and about VIK. I got to tell you though, I want to get to know a little bit more about this wine that you so kindly sent our way too, Daley. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you don't mind, I would love if you would just, tell the listener a little bit about what this is that you sent us and that we're going to be trying today.
Yeah. First of all, I'm apologizing that I'm not drinking it with you. I'm training for a competition on Saturday, and I said that I was not going to have any alcohol for a week in the hope that things go well athletically. So I've got a bottle here with me.
I imagine you've tried it before a couple thousand times.
Yes. So what I sent you guys was the flagship. It was the VIK 2021. And the story I like to tell about this is the changing of its character over the course of 10 years, basically. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, at least I think I mentioned it, the first wine that was vinified was just VIK, and then I mentioned that Mia Carla was added later, and Omega, and a couple of other things. So that was essentially a blend of anything that was planted on the vineyard and was ready to go. And then over time, what Christian has done is he's gradually refined the blend. So back in 2011, and I have a bottle in my wine rack that I'm waiting for the right opportunity to open. I want to try the 11 and the 21 together. I've never tried the first one, so I'm really excited.
Wow.
What he did was he just had Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Syrah, and Cabernet. That was VIK. It was just, here's what we got, it's in a bottle. And it was getting a bit of attention from day one. And then after 4 or 5 vintages, Christian was able to see that the Cabernets were doing pretty well. So he moved the blend into more of a 3/4 Cabernet Sauvignon, 1/4 Cabernet Franc blend. And then that was VIK for a couple of years, up until 2021. Bear in mind, the Cabernet Sauvignon dominant blend was doing really, really well. Again, getting a lot of press, a lot of high scores. And then in 2021, Christian took what I think is quite a brave decision, and he flipped it. So the VIK that you have now is, I say 3/4, I think it's 77% Cabernet Franc.
That's what we have down, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then 23% Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's what unlocked the 100 points. If you're able to try some like maybe 2019, 2018 VIK, it's still unmistakably VIK, but the 2021 just has a certain lift to it. I hear or I read English wine critics talking about lift quite a lot. I don't hear it so much on this side of the Atlantic, but there's a little bit more of a gentle acidity that brings a slight more freshness to it compared to the Cabernet Sauvignon dominant vintages that I've been able to try previously. So it sees all new French oak, and of course the barrels are all constructed on site, like I mentioned earlier. Christian worked in Bordeaux over a few vintages, and one of the chateaus he worked at was Chateau Margaux. And Chateau Margaux has their own tonnellerie on site. So that was one of the things that he wanted to steal from the French.
Well done.
And bring over. So again,
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
Indeed it is.
Amazing, and I do want to emphasize, like, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Incredibly generous. So this is 2021. This is the 100-point wine, and also this wine bought in the world it runs around $150.
Yeah, it will change, of course, depending on your market. We aim for a retail price of between $159 and $169.
I think the cool thing you were mentioning earlier is, as far as accessibility goes, it's you have these different bottles, and they all kind of sit, correct me if I'm wrong, like kind of in those different cost brackets. So where would the Omega, and I apologize, what was the other one?
The Mia Carla?
Yeah, where do they sit as well, cost wise?
Yeah, I was kind of sensitive about that when I was saying it. These wines are still expensive products. Wine is still a luxury product, and I don't want to sound too blasé about it. There's still an investment, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
So if VIK is around, let's just round up, let's call it 160. Mia Carla, you will find retail at between 40, 45, more or less. And then the Omega closer to 29 on the shelf.
Wow.
Right. But I think like that to me is brilliant, because that 29.45 are I think are very accessible and thoughtful price points for people who are starting to get into wine and are taking it more seriously. And to your point earlier, when it is such a thoughtful and intentional group like VIK, like, we're not talking about a reduction in quality. It is a style and a difference in how it's created, which I just think is very cool. It's like a ladder as you want to get deeper into it. So I just wanted to name that, because I didn't want to. I wanted to name the priceless bottle, but I also didn't want to scare any of our listeners away from the brand VIK, because I think the other price points are extremely accessible.
That's what we try to do. It kind of goes back to the idea of the storytelling that I mentioned earlier. You want to have something for everyone. Whether we said, natural or traditional. In this case, it's like, what can we offer you that would be a Tuesday night wine? What can we offer you that would be a wedding anniversary wine? We hope that there's something for everybody.
That's perfect to me because I'm just like, yes, 100%. Like, there's a Tuesday night wine cost, and like, yes, and I mean, we're gonna get into this bottle in a second, but like, it's a gift bottle or a special occasion bottle. At least for where I am financially in my life currently.
Totally. And a special occasion bottle with, I know we've said it, but I feel like we can't say it enough. 100 point scores from 2 different critics. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
All
Certainly makes my job a lot easier.
I would imagine. So cool.
And I'll say, Daley, I know you listen to some of the episodes. Like, we try not to put too much stake in numbers because we think wine is about the experience and who you're drinking it with and why you're drinking it. But it is hard to ignore a perfect score in any sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I often say, and again, it's you've got to play a bit of a character in many ways. When I'm presenting, I mentioned it earlier, this idea of adapting what you say to whoever you got in front of you. There are some people who I'll speak to who just say to me, I just do not care about points. I don't want to hear about them. And that's fine because, again, this story is so interesting and so complex.
Yeah.
And I've got plenty of other things to talk about. But again, the other side of that coin, I was in a suburb of Indianapolis about 6 weeks ago. And I went into a wine store that only sold wine by points. I'd never seen it before. It was amazing.
Interesting.
Literally every single bottle on that shelf had a scorecard underneath it. It had the critic's score and the tasting note. And I thought that was, talk about going one way or the other.
Right.
It was really, and that just shows, if points are important to you, then there's a market for that. But then, of course, vice versa.
All right. I'm super excited to give this thing a try.
Tastes like wine.
Nice. All right. Colin, I'll go to you first, buddy. What are you getting on
Sure.
the nose?
Yeah, I know we usually start off with tasting notes right away, but the one thing that pops into my mind, just like I can't get out of my mind, the one word is elegant. This is just a beautifully elegant wine. I mean, it's just so well put together through and through. But as far as flavor notes are concerned, you really get that Cab Franc, which I love. I'm such a Cab Franc guy. But you get the dark fruit notes. You get that Cab Franc earthiness, which I really love. There's just so much to parse through here. That oak is definitely shining through, but in such a well integrated way. We have so many wines on this show where the oak kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. This is not that. This is just, everything makes sense here.
It's funny when I right before we started recording, my wife was like, "Do not drink that entire bottle by yourself. It's the nicest bottle of wine we have in our house." And she's like, "I know I'm not." She took a sip. And she's like, "I know I'm not supposed to say this, but it's really smooth." And it's just like there's like these wine terms that like I don't know how to always use, but when you said lift, I'm like, I wouldn't necessarily personally use the term lift or know when to use the term lift, but like you take a sip of this, you're like, yeah, this wine's got lift. Like, it's just like it has that lightness to it and that balance. And I think from a structure standpoint, like it's just nice to be like, I enjoy tannins and this is tannic, but it's not over the top. Like I enjoy the acidity, but it's not overly acidic, and everything's just kind of working in harmony. And and of course, like Colin says, like you're getting some of those like dark fruit notes on top, and you get that earthiness and all that. But to me, like the experience of the actual balance and structure of this glass is the thing that I'm enjoying most about it, because it's just a very smooth experience of drinking wine while also knowing that you're getting something bold. We didn't name ahead of time. This is 14.5, ABV. So it's not a light, but there's like none of that burniness. There's none of that alcohol hang that you sometimes get with a big 14.5%. It's just really well balanced.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are talking a lot about the balance. Couldn't agree more. But I think we need to go back and talk about some of these notes too, because I feel like every time I go in there, I'm finding something in addition to what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, complex is an understatement.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is one of the first times where like I actually, how we always kind of joke about how we talk about black currant a lot, and we want to
Yeah.
go actually find it and try it. But like, I can pick that out clearly, and that's what's so interesting about it too. Is like, I feel like it's not muddled in there. All of the notes are very clear. Maybe that's going back and speaking to the balance of the whole thing, but it's so you can really just pick out these notes with a lot of clarity that I don't think that we find a lot when we're doing this. If that
Yeah, as
makes
far as
sense.
other fruit, no, it makes total sense. But as far as other fruit is concerned, I get some of the dark plum, some blackberry, I think from the Cab Franc, maybe a little dark cherry in there. But then there's so much other stuff in here too. With the oak, there's a little bit of that earthiness. You could spend hours just talking about the aromas. It's pretty incredible smelling.
Absolutely. Now, Daley, I want to ask you, sitting there listening to us at the very beginning of the show, you were like, the good thing about wine is like no one's wrong. What did we miss?
No, nothing at all. Nothing at all. Elegance is a great word for it. Dare I say, and again, it's not a criticism, I do feel like the 2021, if I were to compare it to the 2020, which was a Cabernet Sauvignon dominant, the 21 certainly has a little bit more elegance to it. For sure. Those Cabernet years were more muscular. They were more broad-shouldered. They were a little bit more, what you might expect, dare I say, in a very stereotypical, overgeneralizing way from a South American wine. Something that might be a little bit more extracted, a little bit more oaked, just a little bit more intense. When we move from the 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon to the 21 Cabernet Franc, that idea of lift, of elegance, of freshness. I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned the black currants and cassis, because I didn't know until I moved here that they don't really exist over here. Like, of course, in the UK and in France, we get cassis everywhere. Like, I know what they are, I know what they look like. But it turns out that Alexandra, she'd never actually tried any. And I was like, how is that even possible? But it's
No
over here. It's just a wine tasting note, and people are like, where do you even get these things from?
Yeah, it's like I know what it kind of tastes like solely from what people have told me that this wine tastes like that.
Yeah.
Man, I love what we're talking about here, and I feel like we're sort of getting into review territory anyway. So let's just pull back the curtain and dive fully in, and let's review this wine. You guys okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah, but did they like it? It's time for the review.
All right, as host, I'm going to reserve the right to go last. There's no precedent for that.
Wow.
I'm making that a
making
rule
things
now.
up as you go along. Cool.
That's how we're doing it today. Colin, I'm going to go to you first, man. Give us your review. Where are you putting this thing?
Yeah, it's kind of unfair to compare this to anything we've tried so far, to be completely honest, because this is just so much better than really anything else we've tried. We talk about value a lot, and I know this wine comes in around $160, maybe at the high end, but the value you get out of it, even at $160, is incredible. Like, $160 is a lot of money to spend on a bottle of wine, but I would happily spend that on this bottle again. No problem. So do I put it in my wine fridge because it's the best wine we've ever had on the show? I can't not put it in the wine fridge. Yeah, I guess it has to go in the wine fridge.
Is it if it's in the wine fridge?
It has to. I mean, it's just so enjoyable. It's so well balanced. Like it's elegant. Like I said, I'm a huge Cab Franc guy, and this being such a Cab Franc forward wine, but with the backing of the Cab Sauv, you get the really nice tannic structure, really nice acidity. It just all comes together, and it's just so good. It's just damn good wine. Like just I want to keep drinking this, again and again and again. Phenomenal special occasion wine. If you see it on the shelves and you have the money for it, absolutely pick it up. It's incredible. It's an incredible wine. So
What are you taking out?
Taking out? Oh boy, let me see what I.
But while he's thinking, I'll give a quick reminder to our listeners. So if you're a new listener or you just need a reminder, the way we rate things on the show is about the experience who you want to drink with. So drain wines are wines that we're saying, please don't drink this. Backup wines are wines that are, if you have to drink that, they're not terrible, but It's fine. You know, our casual sippers are wines that are not necessarily the wines you want to show off, but hey, they're not bad, and drink them around the house, have it around, cool. The must share wines are our best wines, our cream of the crop. Like, these are good wines. Share them, bring them to dinner, show them off to friends. And then our wine fridge, our top honors, we all only get 3 spots in our fridge, and there can only ever be 3 wines in our wine fridges. So what Colin is doing right now is determining which wine he is taking out of his wine fridge, ceremonial salute, to put the VIK flagship wine in its place.
Yeah, so I still have the Laurent Delaunay Macon Village in there.
That's
That's the one I'm going to take out. Yeah. That hey, a red wine in my white wine fridge. So, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean,
There we go.
It's just so damn good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Village is still place of honor, great to the side, awesome. It's a great wine, but great, incredible.
Yes.
Aaron. Yeah. I mean, I am. This is an absolute must share. It is not that I don't want to put it in my wine fridge. I just try to keep my wine fridge to be wines that I'm going to drink on a Tuesday. And I think to the point that we kind of named earlier, this is a special occasion wine. This is really solid, really high quality. And I think outside of just this wine being so good and just so elegant and so smooth, and if you need a wine for a special occasion and you like Cab Franc especially, and you have this in your area and you can grab it, like, you should definitely give this a try. I would say that what I'm thinking about beyond just this bottle is adding VIK, the brand, to just wines I want to have more of, and especially when I think about there's this bottle in that price range and they have so many other bottles in these other accessible ranges. I want to get more into trying the brand on the broader side as well. So this bottle, the VIK flagship wine, absolutely delicious, absolutely a must share wine. You should grab it and give it a try. Joel?
This is so in my wine fridge. This is, you guys said I was never taking out the Robert Graffier.
You still had that in there?
It was like,
Oh, wow.
adios. Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
and some Burgundy
unfair.
replaced by a Chilean wine. That's
Yeah.
kind of a big deal.
Yeah. I think I've got to do it. I tell you what, I am
Daly's life complete.
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we've had a lot of wines on here where we drink it, we go, you know, and we analyze. It's really cool, and there's a lot that we like, and some things that we're like, oh, this is interesting. This is the first wine I've had in a long time where I went, oh, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, just from first sip and onward, and you know, so approachable and pleasant yet complex, and just, I really, really do love the word lifted. I think we first said that a couple of episodes ago, and I think it's a perfect word for a wine like this, where it has so much of the complexity and so much body and so much, you know, carrying it along, but it does it in such a light way, and just that being able to do that on its own, I think it's just such an achievement. I don't think I've enjoyed a wine this much in a very long time,
Really?
if ever, on what we've been doing on this show. I'll tell you that much. So very clearly a wine fridge wine for me, and I knew it from the very beginning.
Just been hanging on to that forever.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep. Love it. So good, man. Anything you wanna add on to just, you know, the wine? Anything we should know? Anything like that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to jump in there because I actually had a
Of
question.
course. I just
Please, you can have a wine fridge too if you'd like.
yeah, totally.
We would be here all night. I was just wondering when you actually opened the wine. How long has it been breathing for?
I opened mine at about 8:40 Eastern time. So for listener at home, it's about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I opened mine about 30, 40 minutes before we started.
I should say I took a sip right out of the bottle, as I always do. And I said to my wife, let this one sit a little bit and it'll open up, become something special. You could tell it had the bones right out of the bottle, but you know, with wines of this style, it often helps to let them decant.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping, that it would have at least had a couple of hours to breathe. I decant these when I serve them. I know a lot of times the received wisdom is that you don't serve red wine chilled, but this straight out cellar temperature for me is perfect. And I really like, particularly, I know we're talking about the red here, but particularly with our rosé, depending on the temperature you serve it at, you can have 2 or 3 different wines in the same bottle.
Oh, sure.
And that really comes out both in the rosé, and in this VIK 2021 as well. With a bottle like this, if I know I've got a dinner coming up and we're going to be drinking it at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night, I might open it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, to really make sure.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm coming back to this thing at 1 a.m. in the morning. I gotta know. I gotta know.
Absolutely.
It's for the pod.
That's it for the pod. No, really, really cool. And Daley, just really can't thank you and the fine folks at VIK enough for providing this for us, and thank you for teaching us so much about just your journey and everything, and introducing us to VIK. Looking forward to trying more too from them. So I really appreciate that. Before we let you go, we would love to play a quick game, if you don't mind.
Please.
One of our favorites here. It's a game called Pick Your Poison. Aaron.
All right, I got one.
Have our Pick Your Poison today.
Yeah, I
Yes,
got one.
please.
All right, so Pick Your Poisons is pretty much would you rather, just with a wine flair to it. So here's your Pick Your Poisons, your 2 choices. You can only choose one. Pick your poison. You have a beautiful wine cellar, and you can either fill it with one bottle over and over again, your favorite vintage ever of that one bottle, but that is then the only bottle that you can have, or a random assortment of unlimited different wines from all over the world, from varying degrees of quality, but never that one vintage that you love.
Mm. The last bit that you put in
Pick
there
your
made that
poison.
question really good.
So if any of my friends listen to this, they'll be screaming at the podcast right now going, Chateau La Mission Aubryon 1990. Because
very specific.
I can hear certain friends just going, "Oh, Daley, don't embarrass yourself." That would be that. If I had to, and if I had to drink, La Mission 1990 for the rest of my life, I think I'd be very happy with that. But if I'm in a more pragmatic mood, then maybe I would be happy with the more varied wine cellar, knowing full well that La Mission 1989 would be in there, and I'd be very happy with that as well.
Right there, you found the loophole. The vintages right around your favorite.
Well done.
Damn.
That's awesome.
Joel.
Yeah, I think give me the variety. Give me the something. It's too much fun trying something new, and even having the bummers sometimes make the really nice fun ones even more fun. So I'm going with that one. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. The world of wine is too great to only drink one thing for the rest of your life. So, I think I would want the variety. Not that I'd get sad if I was drinking, top tier Bordeaux every day, but I would definitely want to switch it up every once in a while.
Agreed. How about you, Aaron?
Yeah, no, I appreciate everyone's worldview. I'm there. If I've learned nothing else coming on this podcast, it's that there's so much good stuff from different places, and if I lock myself into one very specific vintage of one very specific region, I'm sure it would be delicious. But you miss out on Chile or Argentina or these places that don't necessarily go to the wine elitism first of mind. And so I would much rather have the opportunity to experience non-traditional regions and find the amazing wines that you wouldn't find otherwise than lock into what I'm sure is very good over and over and over again vintage from France or wherever. So yeah, I'm all about and we'll get some crap in there, and that's fine. But
yep. Just embracing the unknown, accepting the chaos of life, and I think that's fantastic. That's a good way to be. Speaking of chaos, this has been this was this wasn't a chaotic one. This is
very straightforward.
This great, yeah.
Minus the internet dropping in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Colin will have smoothed that over by the time this goes live.
Nobody will know.
No, this was so much fun. Daley, thanks again. And I want to ask too, for anybody listening, how can they learn more about VIK? How can they learn more about you? Anything that you want the listener to check out, and where can they get this amazing wine?
Okay, so the wine is available at all good wine stores. across the country. It's also available. We have our own online wine store as well. If you just type in vikwines.com, or just honestly type it in VIK in Google, you'll get access to everything. You'll see the hotels, you'll see the wine store, you'll see the winery's own website as well. There's a whole host of resources. I suppose for the professionals out there, if you're interested particularly in the technical side of the winemaking, we do have a much more pared down professional website that is VIK Vines with a V, vikvines.com. And that's where you can find things like all branding, but also every score we've ever had, all the maps, all the tech sheets. So if you're looking for that type of information, you can get that on vikvines.com. And then in terms of me, I'm on LinkedIn. Very easy to find there. You won't find many other Daleys in the world as a first name anyway. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to respond to a message on LinkedIn. No problem at all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Colin, if folks out there for some reason want to hang out with us, where can they do that?
Instagram. Check us out on Instagram. Stop wasting your wine.
Perfect.
That's it. That's where we hang out.
All the time.
Love it. Yep. Perfectly said. Well, hey, listen, I think we did it. Thank you, listener, so much for coming back and hanging out with us for another awesome episode. And we'll see you again next week. And remember, stop wasting your wine.
Bye, Al.
Bye. Nope, I messed it up. I didn't do it right.
You didn't do your bye right?
I didn't do the thing. I always do. Bye. There we go.
Jeez. Okay. Good for you.